and welcome to the Pikeville City Managers Report. I'm your host, Jill Fraley Dotson, a time when we get together to meet with Donovan Blackburn. He is the Pikeville City Manager to discuss all of the great things going on in and around our community. We have a lot of things to get to today, some exciting announcements, exciting opportunities, and we do not want to take one more moment without saying hello to you.
Well, Jill, hello. How's it going?
It's been a while.
It has been. We've been busy.
We have been busy, busy. We have so many things to talk about today. Sean Cochran was here last time in your absence, so we had a lot of great information that he talked about. We have since then seen our River Terrace seating take shape and open up portions of, so we'll talk about that a little bit later on this morning. But since you were here, there has been a very big announcement from our new friends at Alltech coming into our area. So much to talk about. One of the things that we want to have a pretty lengthy discussion on is the Marian's Branch project, because we received a very large check last week.
We did, Jill, and it's an exciting time is how I'll start out today to say, I mean, my mind's racing in so many different directions today because, and what I'd like to do, and I know that a lot of the questions that you and I have discussed over the past several weeks today, is kind of try to tie everything together. There was an article recently put out by the local paper regarding equating it to a puzzle, and this is what it's really been over the last 10 years, Jill, but more specifically the last 6 months. It's been fitting one piece into another and making them fit and understanding what the opportunity is behind this. And, and I mean, we're very, very, very blessed. And that's all I can say is that the good Lord has shined down upon us and a lot of great things are happening. I just was walking into the studio just a few minutes ago, ran to my good friend Bill Baird. And that's what we were just talking about, is just how really truly blessed we are and how things have just really fallen because of the good grace. And I'm just really excited, and I'm excited to kind of help educate the community out there to know some of this, because there's bits and pieces being said here and said there, and hopefully today we can kind of tie all this up into one big bow and explain why things have happened the way that they are. And
that's what we always try to do with this program. If we just have first-time viewers, it is a complete transparency of what the commission does, of what you do, and all of the great things that are coming to the city. So it really is to educate and to completely inform, to the best of our ability, what is going on, and to help raise awareness. And so maybe if you want to invite somebody to come in for one of our great things that's getting ready to open, you can do that too. So a lot of information today.
It is, and all I can say is hold on. And if I would also challenge, if anybody has any questions, you can find my email on the city's website. Feel free to get up with me, and I'll try to help at least answer or have staff to do so as well. But it's just a tremendous time to be part of this community. And and I go back, Jill, the first thing, I brought a couple slides that goes off some of the questions I know that you have, but I'm going to go to the first slide. There we go. We got new technology here.
We do.
And talk a little bit about the Marian's Branch project. This is so important because this is a 10-year in the making project, and it comes through great vision. And I've said this so many different times, but once I think the folks get through the end of this show, and I think this is, Jill, probably one of the most important shows we've done because of the type of information that's in here. And again, just talking about Marian's Branch. Marian's Branch is a tremendous project for this community. And this starts back 10 years ago. And I've told you the story many times about how the mayor picked me up for the first time 12 days before I started with the city on January the 1st, 2004, and took me to Marian's Branch. Marian's Branch is located on South Mail Trail, runs parallel with the river up on the hillside. At the time, Lone Star, I believe, was mining, and then later Central Appalachian Mining, CAM, came into the picture, and they took over the project. The project was owned at that time by the airport board. The airport board did a good job of working with CAM on having the property put back into a use that it could be utilized for some type of development down the road. But of course, the commission's ideals of what that development needed to be was a little bit different. So they went to work. In 2005, we adopted our first comprehensive plan. After the comprehensive plan, the city annexed the property into the corporate limits of Pikeville. They worked diligently for years in getting sewer to the property, which was a $4.5 million project. And again, I've said in the past they could have went through US 23 and made it a very simple project, but instead they went through Island Creek and they picked up 400 homes that was in desperate need of sewer. So, we help clean up the tributary as well. So, as I've said to many people, Jill, on this story, bear with me because I've got so many different thoughts and there's so many different things that needs to be explained. But, again, I say 10 years ago, and the commission not only had great vision back in that day, but diligently worked their plan, but they did it in such a way that it's amazing even to me of how things just fell into place and all the pieces of the puzzle came together. Though it took 10 years to get to this point, understand that the property was being mined along this time, okay? And when the property had stopped being mined, then the Division of Surface Mining had to go through their different phases of release before the property was buildable. And that's very important. The reason it's important is that this CAM had been working with, and we'd had numerous meetings with CAM, and we appreciate them. They're such a great corporate partner here in the city. There was some, one of the things that the community may not be aware of is that they had $1 million asset up there. They had a knob that was $1 million on their books that they have a permit to mine. And they had covenants attached to that mining. And what they did was they sold that to the city at a substantially reduced price to get rid of those covenants, and so that we don't have to worry about spoil being put onto the property at a later time. So CAM's been a great partner in this. But what happened was that the Division of Surface Mining still had that property working with CAM going through the different phases, and it was under the reclamation process. It was under its phase 3. So the site was just recently released a few months ago. The phase 3 was released. So even if the city had the property 10 years ago, there's nothing that could be done on the property until A, it was finished mined, so it opened up the flat property, and then 2, that when it was completed, that it went through its different phases of reclamation to make sure that it was suitable for development. That took place only a couple of months ago. The City Commission, knowing that was taking place and knowing now that we own the property, sent me to Frankfort back in February to work with Representative Combs in order to secure funding for the property. And the need was, to even back up a step further, is that when Kentucky Power, AEP, hired Insight, and Insight came into the market and did their feasibility study looking for industrial development opportunities. Jill, too many times in the past, this community has been told, and Eastern Kentucky has been told, that the only industry we could attract is the mining industry. Right. And that's simply not true. And the commission held true that was not true. So they saw this vision and worked hard towards getting us to this point. So, and what I'm doing is I'm laying the foundation to get us through the rest of the slide, but the folks need to really understand the story behind this, because there was a lot of work, a lot of great things that had to take place to get to this point. So when I go and I meet with Representative Combs, Leslie, back in February, soon thereafter we talked about the bridge. One of the things that Insight stated on this site that had a couple of what they call fatal flaws in the industry, and one is there was an adequate sewer capacity. And the other one is that we did not have an adequate road to go to the site. The only thing that was there was no coal haul road. So the commission stepped back and we looked at 3 different options. But the price of building a road is it's amazing at what the roads cost. So the decision was made is if we could build a bridge, the most economical way to do it was to build a bridge on South Mail Trail to give easy and quick access, and then to take the existing coal haul road that had 18-wheelers on it for years and years, so it's a very solid road, and reconfigure it a little bit to accommodate tractor-trailer traffic. Then we could do that. We could get rid of that fatal flaw. And as you know, Jill, we've been working the last 3 years on a new sewer plant. Right. That we'll talk about here in just a moment also. So the fatal flaws that we had in place, the commission was already looking at ways to address it, sent me to Frankfort in February, and I met with Leslie Combs, and then I asked her if she would set up a meeting with various components of the governor's cabinet, and she did that. So we sat around a table with Department for Local Government, the governor's cabinet members, and we talked about Marion's Branch and significance of what that project could mean to Eastern Kentucky. Well, that kind of tied SOAR in together as well. So what the governor's cabinet said at that time is that it's a significant project. They understand the need for it, but what they would challenge the city to do is to find a partner to go on the property to prove that business and industry would like to locate there. So that's what we did. We came back, and at the same time, the governor and the congressman had asked me to participate in the SOAR initiative. And then during that process, we held the SOAR conference here in Pikeville, Expo. And then during the conference, Congressman Rogers and Governor Beshear, I took them around to the different sessions that were going on, and I was asked if I would take on the role of the managing director for SOAR, which I did, and I still am. We are seeking right now an executive director position, but I was appointed by the executive board, which now Gene Hill, my good friend Gene, is now the chairman of, or chairperson of. But I'm the treasurer, I'm the managing director, and I'm the fiscal agent for that organization. We are doing a search for the executive director's position. So because of SOAR, and again the tie into this is during the conference that they held here with SOAR, I had heard at that time that Dr. Pierce Lyons was looking at some type of investment in Eastern Kentucky. And I was approached by two members of the commission that came to me and said, Donovan, who attended the conference, that we had heard, did you hear about Dr. Lyons? And it's a major business in Kentucky, headquartered in Nicholasville. We'd like for you to go and see if you can talk to them. Well, ironically, at the same time, and it just shows how good things fall into place. Everything falls into place, right. And by divine intervention and a lot of prayer. But at the same time, I was actually putting an addition on the back of my house, and I was out building. Again, this is back in the winter months. I had taken a few days off. Well, actually, was on vacation that week, putting an addition on. And I got a call from James Hurley. And President Hurley knows Dr. Lyons not only through the university, but he goes down when he goes to Lexington Times. Dr. Lyons, who will be 70 years old on Sunday.
And does not.
You would
never know that.
No, absolutely not. He's in great health, and he runs. He actually runs every day.
Very health conscious. Mm-hmm.
So he and James runs as well, Dr. Hurley. So Dr. Hurley runs with James, and so James calls me up and says, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm at the house here, and I'm up on my roof actually putting an addition on." And he said, "Well, I need to stop by." Well, he stopped by and he reached me a pamphlet and said, "I know you're on vacation, but Nathan Holman, who is the COO of Alltech, is coming in to meet with Governor Patton and myself to talk about some things that they have some interest on with the university, and they would like for you to attend that meeting as well to show Nathan around Pikeville, and they have some interest in some agricultural type businesses." So knowing again that the distillery brewery was an option, and then hearing that they have some interest with the ag business, I came in and took a day of my vacation, came in and spent the whole day with Nathan and his wife, and showed them Pikeville, and along with James and President Patton, or well, at the time President Patton, but obviously Governor Patton. So from that, about a month goes by, and I didn't hear anything, and so I'm in I'm in Frankfort at a Kentucky League of Cities executive board meeting. I'm on the executive board for the KLC. And I got a call from James on an unrelated issue. And in that conversation, he said, "Well, I'm getting ready to head your way because I'm getting ready to do a run with Dr. Lyons." He said, "I just hung up." And I said, "Oh, well, if you could, why don't you give him a shout back?" I've sent him a couple of emails to see when he could meet with me. And so James calls me back and said, "I just talked to Pierce, and he said if you can be there in the next 30 to 45 minutes, he'll meet with you." So I left my board meeting, went directly to Nicholasville, and I think I've told this story before. Dr. Lyons took 3 hours with me, Jill. We sat down.
Within 30 minutes.
Yeah,
3 hours.
Again, a $1 billion CEO sat down and took a 3-hour time frame with me. Showed me. We talked about Pikeville. We talked about the vision, and we talked about an aquatic facility and a lot of different things that he had an interest in at that time. But he took me out to the farm and showed me some things on the farm there, and since that time, Dr. Lyons and I have become very close. He's a great guy. His wife, Deidre, is absolutely phenomenal. He's got great leadership in his organization. Again, Mike Castle, who is one of his vice presidents and head of his corporate legal affairs, is from Prestonsburg. Nathan Holman, again, is the COO. But we also attended his symposium. As a matter of fact, Dr. Hurley went there, and we spent the week at the symposium as well. So, and that's when he released the distillery brewery concept back, I think it was in April. But from February to April, within that time frame, several meetings have taken place. The commission made several offers. Dr. Lyons came to the community several times, and we found a facility that they would have an interest in, and a lot of reasoning and rationality behind that. So during that time, now let's go back to clean it up with Marion's Branch, Jill, because it is an interesting story, and I certainly, for transparency purposes, I want the community to understand how deals like this come together.
And I think that the one thing that a lot of people in the community are talking about, the distillery brewery thing was a top of mind for everybody. And Marion's Branch was kind of a second tier thought for a long time, but when you read about Alltech and all the different businesses that they have, it's not just the brewery distillery business, but there are so many different opportunities, and it just kind of fit in, but it was always kind of put at the second thought because of all the excitement around the distillery brewery part.
That's a perfect point, Jill, because what Alltech was interested in coming to Pikeville for was the distillery brewery.
Right.
Okay? Once they came here and they saw the opportunity and potential, that's what led into Marion's Branch, because that's what happened. After I went down and had the initial meeting, and during that meeting, they talked about the focus of wanting to be part of the Bourbon Trail, to bring the Bourbon Trail to Eastern Kentucky. They talked about that their town branch center, they're in Lexington, had 40,000 visitors last year with no marketing at all. The only marketing was on their website, or on the state's website as a part of the Bourbon Trail. So the initial discussions was a distillery brewery, and that was the step in. That's why the commission and the city worked with them first on the step in, because the backside of it is that we then started talking to them about other possibilities and opportunities, and would they be interested in Marion's Branch? Because if you go back to my conversation with the governor's office back in January, February, it was, if you can bring a business to Marion's Branch, we'll supply the infrastructure. Prove to us that a business will be interested. So as the pieces of the puzzle starting to fit, 10 years ago, vision, 2 years after that, annexation, putting infrastructure such as sewer on the property, looking at that 380-acre piece of developable tract of property in close proximity to the city was a major piece of the puzzle, but trying to get all the other pieces to fit had to work just right. So what happens then is that Representative Combs then gets the bridge put into the road plan. It's put into the two-year road plan. So after Dr. Lyons commits and makes the announcement at the symposium over the distillery brewery in the back of his mind of the Marion's Branch project, then his team committed and got everything moving forward. So now what Dr. Lyons does is he's the 30,000-foot guy. He comes in and sees distillery brewery, okay, check, done, I've handed it over to my design team, let's move forward. So then we start then after the distillery brewery was committed to, which was the first footprint into our community, then he started taking the steps to talk about the other opportunities, which is what our main interest was, getting them in the market, which was open up the industrial park, because that's huge to the area. We need to be able to not only diversify, but we need to create jobs. That's the commission's been their main goal for years, is looking at way to help diversify our economy and creating jobs. And we got great partners, Jill. We've got people like the banking industry, Community Trust Bank, that's just one of it. They're headquartered here. You got the hospital and their millions of dollars in investment, the university and their millions of dollars in investment. So when you look at all those different components, all those pieces of the puzzle fitting together, then what happens is that I go to them, and there's another big important part of this that we'll come back to over the distillery brewery, why they became interested. But now let's talk about Marion's Branch, and then I'll back up and we'll bring in the tourism piece into why Alltech decided to come to Pikeville. It wasn't just because I went and met with Dr. Lyons, or because a community, and Dr. Lyons has said this publicly. Dr. Lyons has said that of the 128 countries that they deal with, Jill, that they have never been as welcomed as they have been by the City of Pikeville and the Pikeville City Commission, as an eagerness to literally move mountains to make things work for them. I mean, they've been very impressed with coming in, and all of a sudden, bam, you got a bridge, bam, you got a infrastructure, bam, you got a road. So it's very exciting. So now let's go to Marion's Branch. Let's talk about some numbers. Let's talk about some numbers. And let me wrap some heads around what has happened with this community. And again, you talk about the great vision of this commission and them working their plan. I mean, it's just phenomenal what they've done and how well they've done their job. So I talked about the 10 years ago, but understand, even though the thought was 10 years ago, just like the sewer plant is now thinking 30 years into the future for our growth, the property was not suitable for actual development until a couple of months ago when it was released under its Phase 3 by Division of Surface Mining Camp. So we talked about Alltech. Well, Alltech comes to the picture, and Alltech, the one thing I want to get across is that they're now the salvation they're the catalyst. They're not the one company that's coming in. What they've done is the catalyst, and that's what Mrs. Lyons, Deidre talked about during the press conference, is they are simply the first two businesses that will locate on the site. Now, Jill, one of the things that's on here that as we go down, we'll talk about investments, is the reason. Well, I will back up. The other part of this is the reason that Dr. Lyons is interested. Comes back to his Irish connections. Okay.
This is one of my favorite stories.
Well, Dr. Lyons is tying it together again. Is that you compare Ireland's economy to what's happening in Eastern Kentucky? There's a lot of similarities. And Dr. Lyons is from Ireland. He's from a city called Dundalk, which is about 60 miles north of Dublin, right on it's a border town, right on the northern and southern border of Ireland. So Dr. Lyons, 6 years ago, I can't remember the exact number, comes to America with a little change in his pocket, with a doctorate degree in distilling, basically, brewing and distilling. So he comes to America, but his roots is in Ireland. So when he comes to Pike County, or Kentucky, he's always known that there's a rich Irish culture as part of the Eastern Kentucky, and as there is, Donovan is an Irish name. As you know, I've got a lot of Irish blood in my background. My wife does genealogy, and we know where our roots come from. But if you even look at his interest was the Hatfield and McCoy feud, because the name of the product is Dueling Barrels, and
fantastic name.
He put a lot of thought into it. But the Dueling Barrel brand, but when you tie it to the Hatfield and McCoy, and he had never seen the miniseries, but recently he was taking a flight. He was coming back from Europe, I think, or South America or Europe 1, and on the plane back he watched the miniseries. He called me up. He said, Donovan, I've read all the books. I finally got to watch the miniseries. It's a fascinating story. So, and again, if you look at the documentary that was done, a couple of years ago, right before as the miniseries come out, the first part of the documentary talks about the Scottish-Irish history of the McCoys coming through Scotland to Ireland and then coming to America and settling in Eastern Kentucky. So the heritage, when you tie in bluegrass music, comes from the Irish culture. And I've told this story before, but when Dr. Lyons got off the plane, I took him a gift. The first or second visit he was here, and he was getting back on the plane. I'm sorry. And I said, Dr. Lyons, before you fly out, I've got a little gift for you. And I handed him an Eastern Kentucky walking stick. And he laughed at me, and he said, Donovan, this isn't an Eastern Kentucky walking stick. This is a shillelagh. So before he gets back to Lexington, he emails me the history of what a shillelagh is, and again, ties it back to Eastern Kentucky. So Alltech doing again, putting another piece to the puzzle. Alltech is looking at not only being the catalyst, but Alltech does businesses in 128 countries, numerous great national brand names. And what Alltech's intent is they're talking to their partners and asking them to look at Eastern Kentucky also. Thus, there will be an announcement in hopefully in the next 30 days that I'll tease you about here in just a moment. So what happens is that Dr. Lyons and Mrs. Lyons is doing another project, Jill, over in Ireland, in Dublin. They bought a church over there. That's the oldest church in Ireland. And I think it's in Ireland, but I definitely know it's in Dublin. There's over 60,000 bodies buried out back. They think there's over 200,000 actually there, but 60,000 marked. But it's going to be a tourist site that Alltech has bought, and they're making an investment in that. So they've got several investments. One of the things that they're bringing to Pikeville, to Marions Branch, is a multi-layered poultry facility. That actually came out of the Netherlands. So a lot of the concepts and a lot of the thought of what Dr. Lyons is wanting to bring to, it actually came out of Amsterdam, that he's wanting to bring out of Europe is ideals out of places like Ireland and from the European area. So I am leaving Sunday. I'm heading to Ireland to meet Alltech's European headquarters is right out about 15 miles outside of Dublin in a place called Dearborn. And so I'm going over to meet with Alltech's European headquarters. Kevin Tuck is the gentleman that runs the area over there. So I've had some great conversations with him. So I'm going over to talk about, again, different opportunities and the tie-ins to Pikeville and what some of the things that we're looking at doing long-term with Alltech. And then from there, I'm going up to Dundalk, which is Pierce's hometown. And the city, I'm meeting with their economic development folks. They have county governments. I'm meeting with all their county officials and their city officials in Dundalk with the intent of twinning, what they call twinning, with our city in Dundalk. And so how I always say there's the divine intervention piece is that Dr. Lyons called me and he'd been pushing me, when are you going? And I called him up and he said, well, when are you going to Ireland? And I said, well, He said, I've got my staff over there set up. We want to talk about our next steps and et cetera. And I said, well, I'm leaving. I've just made my reservations. I'm flying out on the 3rd of August. And he just laughed and he said, oh, Donovan, the irony of it. And he said, things work together for mysterious ways. And I said, yeah. He said, well, it's funny, you're flying to my birthplace on my birthday. So when you put all those components together, again, I think there's reasons for all these things falling into place. And because we're, Eastern Kentucky, one of the greatest assets that we had, and the reason why Alltech's looking at Catalyst is because we had a great workforce. We've got, unfortunately, the war on coal has created a lot of casualties with unemployed miners, and we've got people that we've got to get back to work, and we've got to find them career opportunities, not just jobs. So when you look at all the building and all the things that's going on and the jobs that are being created, that's part of the overall big story.
Yeah.
Now we keep going to this one slide. Now let's really get back into this slide, and I promise you I'll come down the numbers now so that the folks will see. Here we go. Okay, so when you look at the investments into Marions Branch, as I mentioned, Representative Combs is investing the $8 million to transportation. It's in the 2-year road plan. The road itself, there was an announcement made by the City Commission that went down with Governor Beshear, Congressman Rogers, who's highly vested in this because of their investment with SOAR and proving and creating. That was a great, powerful statement that the governor made, is that we've been told that industry will not locate in Eastern Kentucky, and we're here to prove them wrong. So the $8 million and the $5.8 million, the City of Pikeville, the commission met the day after the press conference, and Secretary Hancock sent back with me the executed contracts through the Transportation Cabinet. So that money is now in the bank and able for the city to draw down, which happened quicker than any project that I've worked on in my 10.5 years. So we now have that money in the bank. This past Monday then, so a week after the press conference, the City Commission met this past Monday and executed the contracts with the engineers, which is Summit Engineering and Palmer Engineering, to design the road and the bridge. So that $8 million and $5.8 million is in the bank. Let me talk about the time frame of this a little bit. So what you've got is that they are immediately starting to design. The bridge or the road will take about 30 to 45 days to design. Then it will be put out to bid. It'll be a 21-day bid cycle, Jill. So that means that we're going to start construction of this road in October. That's how quick this is taking place. Wow. So and it's about a 4.5, 5 month build process. So by the first of the year, January, February, the road will be usable. And we're not putting the final coat of blacktop on because the blacktop plant's not open. But the beauty of this is that we already have a road to the site. We don't need the bridge because the bridge will take much longer. The bridge project, where you're looking more like 14 to 18 months because you've got to do the geotech, you've got to have the design takes longer, you've got to get to the railroad permitting, et cetera. So again, all that money is in place and things are moving forward. So you got the city got a full $8 million grant to the Transportation Cabinet in the 2-year road plan that is now executed, and the $5.8 million came out of the discretionary fund for the governor. So both those monies was granted to the citizens of Eastern Kentucky for a road and a bridge, which was one of the fatal flaws to the site that we mentioned. And then the water and sewer that will be coming is another $3 million investment. I'm working with Commissioner Wilder right now with the Department for Local Government. I've spoke to Tony several times over the past couple of weeks, and we're putting that funding package together to announce that. The Alltech facilities, the two things that Mrs. Lyons announced that they have committed to is the aquatic facility and the multi-layer poultry facility. So that's another $12 million that will be invested at Marions Branch. There is a newcomer announcement that I just mentioned that we sealed the deal on last week, contingent upon receiving state grants. So they still have to go after the state grants, which is why it can't be announced yet, simply because their coming is contingent upon being able to receive these, I said grants, but incentives, state incentives. So if all goes well, and speaking with the state, I know very comfortable that it will, then this is another $10 million investment that will create another 36 jobs. They're good paying laboratory type jobs is the way I'll say. So this is another great announcement. It's a 40,000 square foot facility that will locate up there as well, if all goes well with the state incentive package, which will be completed by the end of this month. So we hope to have an announcement by the governor and the commission again by the end of this month. On top of that, I mentioned we had to bring sewer to the plant. That was a $4.5 million investment. The sewer plant, because the plant cannot handle industrial type flow right now because of all the other stuff that's going on in the city. The need to build a new plant is there. We're going to talk about that just in a second, but that's a $22 million. And then we don't have a price tag on it yet, but the investment by Dark Fiber with Congressman Rogers and the governor, and then Insight study of Kentucky Power's Insight Group, that's a $50,000 investment. So Marions Branch alone, when you add all that up together, Jill, that's a $65 million investment that the city of Pikeville, the citizens of Pikeville, is not investing those funds. Those are funds being invested by various state grants, federal grants, private investment. So when you look at a project, you can't paint a better picture of how many agencies came together. The sewer grant, for example, which we'll talk about, you'll see how many funding agencies is at the table. You're talking about private investors, talking about SOAR, you're talking about, again, and this all started through the vision of Mayor Frank Justice and the City Commission 10 years ago, but more diligently, the last 2 years has been where really the rubber has met the road. So
many different things are coming to that area. I know that we'll be excited to announce the newcomer to the facility.
Yes.
And the area that's going to be another $10 million project. The sewer plant, though, was key to getting that fixed and getting that type of service to that area. You mentioned the 400 homes that additionally came on board when all of that was beginning to be developed. But this is something that has to happen in order to have those type of facilities there.
Well, I mean, absolutely. And it's to serve not only this development, but again, what the commission did, which was great foresight, because the path we were going down was looking at an IFAS system. That's a traditional system, and instead, new technology is being developed all the time. We had heard about a membrane system because membrane is usually traditionally used in water in Kentucky, but nobody has done a membrane system in sewer. There has been a couple of membrane systems developed throughout the country. So we pulled UMG in. We hired Vaughn and Melton, which is experts in developing engineers for sewer, and we sent them to look at several plants throughout the country. The problem was cost. And again, in the commission fulfilling their fiduciary responsibility, they wanted to look at two factors that they had several work sessions on. Public work sessions was one is cost. We got to make sure that we look to make sure we don't put too much burden in debt. The second thing is we have to look long term because we need to design a plant that can last us the next 30 to 40 years. And I'm happy to say they did a phenomenal job at doing both. So what they came up with was a membrane system. The beauty of the membrane system is, Jill, is that it can sit on the exact same footprint of where our existing plant is now. So we don't have to buy additional property. And then the other part of that is if you had bought additional property, then you got to spend money rerouting all those main lines that come to that plant to another location, which is very, very, very costly. So with the membrane system, we currently have a 2 million gallon per day plant there. You use the same tubs, and basically if you're not familiar with the plant, it's just like a pool. It's a round cylinder. We've got 2 of them there, which equates out to 1 million gallons each. But what the membrane system does is this plant will be retooled to where these membrane systems drop in those pools, and what they do is they treat the sewer instead of what would take 24 hours to treat, it does it in 8 hours. So you get triple the capacity out of, or can, based upon how many membranes that you put in. So this it's a $22 million investment that will enhance our capacity, but it will also allow us to grow to 4 million gallons with the new membrane system, with the ability of using the same basins of growing up to 6 million gallons without making any additional modifications other than just dropping more membranes in. So to retool the facility, it's a $22 million project. Now if you look at the slide, that $22 million, we were just recently, an announcement was made by the EDA of a $2.3 million grant to the city. We already received a $4.5 million grant from Rural Development, and we received a $1 million grant through the Corps. And then the commission had what I call leftover projects. We had worked with our coal severance projects, and we had done several projects bringing sewer to different areas. We were able to take the leftover funds and put together one big fund of $500,000. So we had another $500,000 grant through coal severance. And then we also qualified for a Rural Development low-interest 39-year loan at $10,500,000, which what the commission has done over the past several years is they have paid off a lot of the old debts, a lot of the old bonds. knowing that they were going to take on the new debt service. So they've done a brilliant job, again, positioning themselves for the $22 million. Now, we've got 3 or 4 other funding agencies that they're looking for to that we're applying for, that they said basically, those funding agencies said, wait, after you get your EDA grant, your RD grant, your core grant, then come to us. And that way we can show that there's other participant parties that will allow us to grant funds to there too. So picking up the other couple of $1 million is not going to be a problem. It's a great funding scenario. It positions the city for the next 30 to 40 years, which is a big piece of this. Now, I know sewer's not fun to talk about, but again, it's a huge piece of that puzzle that we keep talking about of what the commission has done over the last 10 years.
And what has to happen in order for all of those facilities to locate there,
Yep.
bringing jobs to our area. And if you've never been to the Marions Branch property, when you go across the bridge, it really does just completely open up. I had never known that there was that much property there until I was over through there one day and looking over things. And it really is just the convenience of it being so close to downtown, but you really don't realize that it's there. It's going to be a win-win for everybody. But there are certain things that certainly have had to happen in order for that to take place. Now, we have a lot of different tourism opportunities coming to our area. I know you have a map here that you're going to show us of that facility. We also have a picture of what the Dueling Barrels facility, a mock-up, is going to look like. And then we are going to also talk about something we're doing on August 1st, which we're taping on the last day of July. So if you see it after, this would already have happened. But the city has made another investment in a wonderful piece of property that we're going to talk about in a few moments that we will announce to the public and dedicate that facility tomorrow.
I mean, again, there's just so many things going on, and you know, Jill, anywhere you go in Kentucky, they're talking about what's happening in Eastern Kentucky right now. You know, and obviously it's overdue. I mean, we've lost a lot of jobs. There's been a lot of people suffering because of what's happened with this administration on a national level, and through the EPA and the regulations have been placed. And Pikeville has been able to weather that storm because, again, over the years of smart thinking, of investing in not just energy, which is extremely important to the region, but because of education and healthcare and banking and legal and tourism and a lot of different other components is what has led us to be able to see the growth and to be able to make the investments that we have, which allows us to move into the second phase. So, you know, it's one of those things that if you haven't been here in the last 10 years, you totally miss it. I had somebody that came through last week that hadn't been here in about 6 years, and he's in your business. You know, he's with the media, and he said, "My gosh, this is like a metro market almost." He just was absolutely bewildered at seeing all the advancements that's been made. And when I sat down with him and I explained to him the things that were coming, he was just absolutely shocked. But what I've done, let me show you a slide here. What I've done, to put some things in perspective. And in this slide, you can't see it all. I kind of got part of it out of the slide. But if you look in the lower right-hand corner, you'll see a little box in there, a little green box, Jill. And what that is and you compare that to all the property. That's Marions Branch, by the way. And you see the yellow road that comes up the hill. That's the road. But you look at the blue road, which is the road that will go around the new development. You can see on the bottom left of the slide that is where Alltech is going to be locating their facility. But if you look over on the right-hand side, I wanted to just bring an example to kind of show it to scale so people would get an idea of how big this property is. That one little green box there, that is a 40,000 square foot business that's sitting on that one little tiny corner over there. So you can see how many 40,000 square foot boxes can fit around this property. It is amazing. Now that is the new business that's not been announced yet. That is obviously what we're working on. So when you look at, you can compare and see all the different opportunities. I just want to give the folks out there a feel for why this property is so important.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, until you go over there and you begin to start to drive the property and actually see how big it is, until you see it on a map like that, I knew the acreage and how big it was. But when you see it that way and see the different buildings that are placed there, you do see all of the potential. And with Alltech being involved not only in those businesses, but many businesses to come and future endeavors, certainly having that type of property so close to the area, and you can just imagine the number of jobs that that's going to bring in.
Well, and that's a key point too, because part of the reason that makes this property so important is because of location. You know, not only because of all the amenities on the property, such as natural gas. There's an old rail spur that used to be over the hill that we're working with CSX on right now. Had a meeting this week they came in. You look at the sewer, the water, now the bridge, the road. I mean, this is a tremendous piece of property. And then the other piece of it is, let's talk about now why industry would choose this site. Now, we've talked about all the amenities. We talked about the close proximity. But the question is why? Why did Insight think that this is the premier piece of property in eastern Kentucky? And what they have said publicly is they would put this piece of property up against any property that they deal with in the nation, because of not only the amenities that we just mentioned, but also because of its proximity. And what that means is because what you have is it's in the city of Pikeville, so you have a full-time police department, which is very important. You have a full-time fire department. You have full-time EMS rescue, again with a 4.5-minute response time average. You have a hospital with all the advancements that the hospital has now, and for industry that's extremely important. You have banking and finance. You have both a technical and a university, which for training purposes and layering on different programs is extremely important. All those, and there's a lot more. Bringing people to the area for places to eat, places to stay. And then a big piece of this is, I go back to that commercial air service piece, is when you got somebody coming in from Kellogg's, they're not driving, they're flying. When you've got people coming in from Alltech, they're flying in. So they have to have, again, commercial service to be able to bring them into the airport. So that's why the commercial, we've been working very hard, and we've invested, dollars to work with the Department of DOT and the FAA to make sure that airport is open for commercial air service. That airport is the public's. That it needs to be utilized by the public. The commission and the county has worked on getting, and obviously the airport board and the chamber, because the businesses understands this need. And we certainly appreciate the investment that's been made over the past several years and the recent announcement by the DOT that allows this service to happen, because our future, Jill, is at stake here. Marion's Branch, we're showing that it can attract business. The governor, the congressman, the commission, our representatives, our senators, and I can go right on down the line, supports this project, and why the commission would not let go of not only the ideal Marion's Branch, but of the commercial air service piece. Now, as we sit and we talk about all those amenities that we have that makes it attractive, let's talk just a moment about why Alltech was attractive. And I said earlier in the program, when I went down and I talked to them about coming to Pikeville for the distillery brewery, I realized, and the commission realized, that the first step in would be the distillery brewery. If we could get them here for that, then they would see the potential, and that's exactly what happened. I mean, they're great partners in what they have done with us. And I'm going to go through this list very quickly. There might be a couple of announced things that I make, but when Alltech looked at the market, they wanted to bring not only a distillery brewery that they could put anywhere, but they wanted to attract tourists to eastern Kentucky, creating another economy, another piece of the economy, which is tourism. Tourism is a multi-billion-dollar industry in the state of Kentucky. You can get on the website, and those numbers are there, and the mayor mentioned them during the press conference a week ago this past Monday. But when you look at Pikeville, Alltech said, wow. And that's what they said, this is where we need to be because of what Pikeville is doing and the commission is doing in tourism. So I'm going to go down this list very quickly and just put some things into perspective. Tourism investments, when Mrs. Lyons, when I met with her, and she made a comment during the press conference, at the end of the press conference, and you can watch it on our website, Jill, but she looked over at me and she said, Donovan, she was talking about ecotourism. She said, talking about all the things that Pikeville has done with tourism is why the distillery brewery need to be located there. And then she looked over at me and she said, Donovan, and she referred to a couple of the things. But it went much greater than that. These are the things that we submitted to them. So over the last few years, Pikeville's invested in a new RV park and a bathhouse, worked with Hillbilly Christmas in July organization on the special needs park, created new picnic shelters at no cost. You can go online and book those for $1. Retooled the Overlook, the Pikeville Theater project, which Alltech will be making an announcement on the partnership soon. The Pikeville Theater project was such an important project. There's been so many people that has praised the commission for making this investment, Jill, that before the commission even made this decision, we went to people like Paul Patton, and we went to people like Walter May and asked their opinion on, is this something that you want to see? I remember picking Walter picked me up actually, and we drove over to the side and he said, Donovan, we're attracting doctors and professionals from places like Chicago and New York. Cultural experiences such as a theater is extremely important for us to be able to bring people in. So the commission invested in that because of great leaders in our community have said that of what their people want to see. and what we need. But more importantly, being able for Jenny Wild to bring a professional theater into downtown Pikeville, put it close to the hotels. It'll be right beside of, guess what? The new distillery and brewery. So Alltech looked at that location because of that great investment in the community. So there's some partnerships taking place with Alltech as of to why that this facility was extremely important. And last week, my wife and I went, and my mother-in-law and a few family members, we went to go see, I don't know if you had the opportunity, but they had the Little Mermaid.
The Little Mermaid.
Showed up for it. They had sold out crowds when they had it. When we were there, it was sold out. Jill, to sit in the audience and to listen, there was 70, 80 kids in the audience. To listen to the kids cackle and laugh and with excitement was well worth. That's why the Commission has made these decisions. It's an investment. It's an investment in the community to build not only tourism in, to bring great companies like Alltech in, but where the rubber meets the road is seeing that 2-year-old or 3-year-old or 4-year-old sit in the audience and have a great time without having to travel, spending money in places like West Virginia, Lexington, like we've had to do for so long. So, this is a great amenity to the community. Same thing with the Bob Amos Trail System, a walking trail, riding trail, running trails. We've had great partnerships up there with the university on those, with the Boy Scouts. We've got the Shelter 2 River Trails system. There's going to be an announcement in the next, hopefully, 30 days on the River Trail system, which ties into the zip line. And I can say this, but the zip line, we were going to surprise with an announcement on Friday that the zip lines will start construction. Yesterday on the way, Robert, the guy that's building the zip line, was on his way here. He's coming out of Iowa, and he was accidentally ran off the road. He's not hurt, thank God, but the trailer that he was hauling that had the cable on it had a major malfunction, I'll say. Basically broke the axle and the wire went flying. So he's now recouping, and we hope that he'll be here in the next week or so.
Okay.
So, but look at the city park of how it's completely changed and all the events that we have. The Expo Center, the city took over that.
I was telling you before we started talking that I got to meet Cindy yesterday,
Yes.
the new director, and I have invited her, and I know you have too, to come be on our show. She is a firecracker, and she is so ready to explain that not only the Expo Center is a regional facility, but it is owned and it belongs to the city.
Yes.
And to this county, and what a wonderful opportunity it is, and that there are events that go on there every single day. It's not just a concert venue or a place for Sesame Street Live or Disney on Ice to come in. There are events that are held there every single day, community events. And when she comes to visit with us, she has some great vision and great ideas, and certainly she has hit the ground running.
Well, Cindy has, as you know, she comes with great experience.
She does.
She was from Ashland, obviously the Paramount facility up there. She's had great success, has a tremendous amount of contacts. Originally, we had, when Steve St. John left, she was actually our candidate that we made our first offer to, but unfortunately some things happened at the time and she wasn't unable to relocate. We were blessed this next go around that she still had the interest.
Everything falls into place.
Another piece of the puzzle,
Yeah.
Jill. And I'm going to talk about, I'm sitting here and I'm just going to apologize to the people behind the camera too. I'm looking at the clock, we got about 10 minutes. We're going to go a little bit longer than that, not much longer, but I just want to give them a little heads up because, Jill, this is so important. There's been a lot of discussion on the community. I want to make sure that everybody has the full story in one setting. It won't take much longer, though. I promise.
We'll get in trouble if it does.
They're going to hurt me. So, with that said, what we've got is talking about the Expo Center, and I'm going to come back to the Expo Center here in just a couple of minutes with another slide. Mm-hmm. But also the investment in the parking garage, the Overlook remodel, and the new shelters up at the Overlook. Of course, the city worked to bring the Hampton Inn in also, and big long story to that. The Bob Amos Park, the Expo Plaza, the Billy Johnson stage, which we have tomorrow's Main Street Live going on.
Bluegrass night, I think, isn't it? Is it
70s night. Yeah, 70s. Which we also have a conference going on this weekend with the Kentucky Heritage Council, so that was part of. Of course, the Bears downtown are working with Main Street and the Artisan Center Group. Hillbilly, Hatfield McCoy's riding tour, the zip line, which I just mentioned, the river trails, carriage rides, horse rides, the Arts House, terrace seating. By the way, we just announced Sunday best.
Yeah,
Great.
I'll be here for Hatfield McCoy Heritage Days.
I think a great outdoor venue for the first time.
The Riverfield Arena.
The Riverfield Arena. What do you think
Very
about
nice name. I like it. And if you've not seen the finished product of that, and I know there's still some different things that we're working on to finish it, but it's absolutely beautiful.
Well, when the governor and the congressman was here back during the SOAR event, one of the promises they made at some point is they were so impressed with us using the little bit of space we have in downtown and trying to create all these attractions, they want to come and see the racing. So I'm looking forward to getting them here to
That'll be fun.
the first drag race. But also, as you know, we're working with the county and the new board has been set up for the museum. We just mentioned the York House, which we'll talk about at the end of the show. The Poly Bridge restoration project, the new hotels that were just gone in and new restaurants. And again, we've mentioned the Bourbon and Distillery, and then I've already talked about the commercial air service. And when you talk about various events that have been created over the past couple of years, we're going to go to that slide. You know, things like Muscle on Main, the new block party, the drag racing. Obviously, we've been a long-term investor in Hillbilly Days and pulling off that event with the county and the chamber and the Shrine Club. Nightmare on Main, Hatfield McCoy Heritage Days, various numerous 5K events, the Rough Tough Cuts, Hillbilly Christmas and July's Kids Day in the Park, Main Street Live, carriage rides, Hatfield McCoy riding tours, and the carriage rides is also historical riding tours, and the new kayak fishing tournament. There's other things that I've left out, but when Mrs. Lyons and I sat down with her and I showed her all these different components of what we were doing for tourism, that's why they made the decision to take the first step in Eastern Kentucky. They wanted to make an investment in Eastern Kentucky, but they chose the site, they chose the location simply because of all this investment made by the great vision of the City of Pikeville, City Commission, and all of our partners, the various boards like the Main Street Board, the Arts Board, the Tourism Board, and all of our great partnerships that we have in the community. So there's been a lot of work, another big piece of the puzzle. Now, next couple of slides, I'm getting too fast, I'm starting to talk funny here, Jill. What I wanted to show is the investments that's being made in the community. And let's go to the next slide. These are projects that have been recently completed, and all that I put in here, again, when I was sitting down with Alltech and other partners, was showing them was projects have been recently completed that the City of Pikeville has had some involvement or some investment to. I did not put anything in there that unless the City Commission had a part or play into it. So let's go down those. Again, this is just the last couple of years, 2 years. The Judicial Center. And again, that was a county project. I served on the board. The city attorney and myself worked with Rolling Case. We did most of the buyouts on the property. The Main Street program is working with the judge and the AOC right now on finishing the park beside of the grass area. You're going to see a whole new look with park benches and trees and all that stuff there. The Pikeville Theater project, which we mentioned, the new City Hall relocation. A new build, the fire station number 3, which will be opened this coming month. The Main Street Division Street facade program, the City Hall gas station remodel beside the City Hall, which will house new business soon. The Arts House remodel, the U-Pike Medical School, we were the conduit to receive the funding and work with the utilities. The terrace seating project we just mentioned, the Horse Trail and Barn Roasted Cafe that was just opened, which is a fantastic facility. Pikeville Medical Center, Hilton Garden, U-Pike College of Business, again, the Hilton Garden, we worked with them on some land swaps, utilities. U-Pike, we were the conduit for the rural development grant in order to bring the funding. The Pikeville Scholar House, the property, serve on the board, worked with Jake for several months on that. The Veterans Affairs remodel, we're going to actually have the new memorial that we're working on that will be a new coming project. Texas Roadhouse, all the river ramps. The Hambly traffic light, small thing, but the resurfacing project, that was about a $300,000 project. The Thompson's Road project, and then again I put on here the city of no involvement, but a new project, another massive project that I put in there was a library. So if you look at the millions and millions of dollars that's been invested in our community over just the past couple of years, that's why Pikeville has been able to grow, is because of the tremendous amount of infrastructure that the commission invested in the community with this great vision working through the city's comprehensive plan. Now, the next slide that I want to go to is things that are yet to take place, Jill, and this is where it gets exciting. Again, commercial air service we've been working on for several years, but extremely important piece of the puzzle. The Bypass Rockfall project, a $5 million project that's in the 2-year road plan that we've been talking to and working with the Transportation Cabinet. The new optometry school, 120 new jobs are coming for that school. Had several meetings with the university. Again, it'll be the same thing, applying for the grants. We'll be acting as a conduit to help them get that funding, but great vision, great leadership, and James Hurley and his whole team, they've just done a phenomenal job. The retail development, $44 million, Jill, develop new jobs, 400 projected new jobs. I know you're excited about all that.
I am excited about all that, and I'll give this little teaser too. You say with 3 new national names to be announced next week.
Yep.
Next week, Neil Wilson, the developer,
Yes.
will be in town. We will be recording a show with him so he can announce those. That will be next Thursday, so look for that to come.
Well, the ladies will be very thrilled
Yes, they
with
will.
some new announcements,
Yeah.
some new chains that you and I are aware of now.
But the one great thing,
I
and I keep
whispered in
going
your
back to the national, yes, a lot of good things happening. But the thing is that, by this Christmas, a lot of people travel outside of our community to do their shopping.
Yes.
And going to these national brands that will be here. Some of those will be open, a lot of those will be open by the Christmas season.
Yep.
So there's not going to be any need to travel outside of the area for certain things. Of course, I'm sure that people will do that just because, but you will have the opportunity to stay home, spend with your local community, which is a win-win for everybody.
It really is. And then on top of that, with all this new construction going on, people are moving to the area. I've received numerous compliments of people that's coming from outside, just couldn't believe this little town. But having the apartments there, that will be also available. Being able to live right there in the city of Pine with all the amenities such as restaurants and shopping and sidewalks and all the wonderful things that are in and around the area. The river trails will still be back there. Are all great assets, and yet Neil is coming. You and Commissioner Carter, it's his show. We'll be talking to Neil about the development. There's been a lot of questions the community's had, and I've asked Neil to come in and kind of give an update. But on top of that, he just signed these 3 new national brands that we were really excited about that we will release. And I know a lot of people were excited. Petco was the most recent announcement.
It's a big thing, our pets.
It is. And another new announcement that will be made that is not part of the retail development. It's been kind of talked about publicly, so I'll go ahead and say, one of the things that the Commission's working on is a dog park that will be up at Bob Amos, where we've reached out to Petco to see if we could look at maybe a possible partnership, but that construction of that area will be done. We'll start here in probably next 30, 60 days. So that's coming.
One more thing.
One more amenity. Going on, though, you've got the retail and housing development. You've got the retail development, housing development, and the Cedar housing development. We worked, Mitch Potter's been doing a great job on that down there. He's another great visionary.
Going up fast.
Great guy in the community that really has made some great investments. That's really helped our community out, so we really appreciate him. You've got the distillery, which we mentioned, the Alltech Visitor Center. You've got the Alltech Gift Shop. You've got the Alltech Brewery, the Alltech Aquatic Facility, the Alltech Multi-Layer Poultry Facility. Again, all that's about $26 million in investments. You've got the York House renovation, which we'll talk about here in just a moment. The sewer plant. You got the Double Quick that's located there on the bypass, all the earthwork that's being done there by Don Childers. You got the Marions Branch Road, Marions Branch Bridge, the Marions Branch water tank, the Thompson's Road Bridge, the Canopy Zip Line, and the new river trails, and then an unnamed business. So, do all this stuff again is looking at starting in the next, most of it less than 12 months. So look at all the construction jobs that are getting ready to occur and all the property investments that is paying property taxes and creating jobs and opportunity. So the last slide I'll go into, other than showing you some pictures, is probably, I won't say the most important slide, but as you look at all the pieces of the puzzle and all the opportunity, why so many people are talking about the great vision and leadership of the City Commission and all of the partners that they have, like the hospital and the university, and the governor and the congressman and our representatives, Leslie and Ray. I mean, it's just a great time. But when you look at all that, let's go to this last slide that say numbers matter. And when you look at the last pieces of the puzzle, understand forget if you've been here the last 10 years of all the changes of how our downtown has completely changed, how our industry is changing, how investments have changed. And the commission has done this, and they've done it by reducing taxes. They cut property tax by 17% a couple of years ago. I've heard people, my wife and I, we were down looking at the York House, and somebody had stopped by, and they said, somebody made a comment, well, the city has raised taxes. And I said, well, no, they haven't. Let me educate you. So I thought it was a good opportunity to kind of put all this into perspective and understanding the city cut property tax by 17%. So even in these tough economic times, what a lot of other cities are facing, especially in Eastern Kentucky, the City Commission cut property tax. They did impose a 2% restaurant tax. And again, that's a 20-cent tax on a $10 meal. Now, the beauty of that tax and the way that they did that is there was a $30 million investment called an Expo Center in downtown Pikeville that was part of the puzzle. The state was not funding that facility. It was owned by the state. It was about to close its doors. So all these investment opportunities, all these things was going to be substantially go by the wayside if that became a big white elephant and had closed. So what the city commission did is they found a way to impose a regional tax, which is only a 2% restaurant tax. It's a tax that if you travel outside this area to most areas that has tourism, so you're going to find that you're paying a bed tax and a restaurant tax. So which also means that the people traveling to our community are the ones that's paying for that. And the importance of this tax is that there's only, again, when you look at the population of the city, you got 7,000 people, but you've got a service area that's 200,000 people. So what the commission was able to do, it's the 200,000 people. The service area is actually, I think it's 217,000 or 219,000. It's those people that are traveling here to our community that are stopping in our restaurants that's paying that tax. It's allowing those dollars to be invested back in our community to pay for the amenities such as the expo center and to pay the debt service on the theater project. So that way that debt would not fall on the backs of the citizens of Pikeville. So they get quality of life. They get another piece of the puzzle to attract the companies like we've talked about, all by benefiting the citizens of Pikeville. So it was a great, brilliant strategic move on their behalf. So they did an offset. Again, they lowered property tax by 17%. They imposed a 2% restaurant tax, which is a tax you get to choose whether you want to pay it or not. You don't have, there's other restaurants in the area. We obviously want them eating here, but that's an important thing, and I wanted to make sure that, again, the community understood that. And then there was a bed tax that was imposed, but how many citizens of Pikeville stay in our hotels? That's a tax that's being paid by travelers elsewhere that our citizens in Pikeville are traveling somewhere else to pay and to benefit somebody else's community. And then, of course, the occupational tax, which has existed for years. I heard Gene Hell recently sit in front of, Gene's a great visionary, sat in front of the governor staff and was talking about the reason Pikeville is growing. And great business minds like herself talks about the reason Pikeville is growing is because they have an occupational tax. They have a local tax that's reinvested back into the own community instead of having to rely upon the federal and the state government to make those investments. So we got a full-time police protection and fire protection, ISO and utilities and all the great and wonderful services we have because we have an adequate tax base. So, and then on top of that, so you look again, tying it all together, City Commission reduced taxes. They imposed a tax on the people that's traveling through the area to pay for facilities, and then they still were able to keep some of the lowest utility rates in the entire state of Kentucky, and on top of that, a trash rate where you get your trash picked up twice a week. So, they've done actually a phenomenal job, and because of all that, Jill, is what has attracted business to our community. So where it comes down to jobs matter, the last bit of the slide here is the number that was released in the paper here recently. The aquatic facility, this is out of Alltech, they project 45 jobs for the aquatic facility, poultry facility 15 jobs, the distillery, brewery, and gift shop, visitor center 50 jobs, new business to announce I mentioned 35 jobs, retail development projected through Neil Wilson 400 jobs, Thomas Tree School was 120 jobs, and then the new zip line and water trails 15 jobs. That equates out to 680 new jobs that will be in just the city of Pikeville alone. Now, those are jobs that we know. Those jobs will create other service demands, which will create other jobs. But on top of that, all the building that I just showed you equates to millions of dollars in investments in our community that will create additional jobs, that will create additional tax base opportunity, and it's just a great time to be part of our community. And even though we can't lose sight of, there are a lot of people and families out there suffering, and that's why the commission is buckled down. They followed their plan. They're making these things happen to create jobs so that people can stay home and that we don't have to keep losing our population to fuel other communities that have done the same type of thing.
Exactly. Absolutely. You have one more, a couple more. Quickly, we'll talk about, I mentioned the York residents earlier in the show. We'll go to look at that picture now. This is what it looked like a few years ago. It has, does it look exactly like this now? Certainly does resemble closely, but that will be restored. Big announcement tomorrow. Dedication ceremony going to happen around noon tomorrow at the site, and it's the oldest house. If I'm speaking correctly, I think Mayor Justice told me is it one of the oldest. It's one of the oldest
houses. It was built back in 1880 by Colonel Dills for his daughter Augusta. Mm-hmm. That's one of the wonderful things again about the commission. What they're doing is Jill, I've always said there's a difference in old and historical. Yeah. There's been some facilities that are old that are going away. And building for new opportunity, but there is historical facilities as well, and the commission has had a great heart to try to restore these. We've worked with the owners, Joanne Johnson and her nephew Rick, for the past 2 years, and trying to find a source of somebody that would want to take this project over. I've shown this house numerous times, but it's at a point now to where if it's not saved, the roof has severe leaks, if something's not done immediately, then we're going to lose a valuable piece of our history. So the City Commission gave me the direction to work with Joanne and her nephew Rick, and the city this past Monday acquired this property on behalf of the citizens of Pikeville. And we are, well, I said this past Monday, actually we did it last week. We talked about it this past Monday. So we've acquired the property. We signed the documents this past Monday. It was put into the city's name Monday. We own the property. It's got a tremendous story behind it, way too long for me to sit here and explain it, but there's a fascination with this house because of the style of the house. It's got, it's one of the, well, it is the first of this style, this kind, in this era, during this time frame. So a lot of history. It's tied directly to, it's called the York House. It's because of Judge York, who was the presiding judge over one of the Hatfield McClure trials. Legend has it, and there's some historical data, that the feud was actually settled in the parlor of this house when he took Randolph McCoy, Judge York did, to Frankfort to work with the governor at the time to try to settle the feud. So there's a lot of, there's a lot of history about Southern, knows far much more than I do, but there's a tremendous amount of history in this. There is an announcement, as you mentioned, that's open to the public. We invite you there tomorrow. It'll take place at 12:30. We get there about 12:15. The Heritage Council, Kentucky Heritage Council, will be there tomorrow. Craig will be presenting the city some funds, but it will be a kickoff because, and what I don't want people to get, what I do want people to know is that this isn't going to be an overnight process. It's been this way for many, many years, but we are going to seek public investment. We're going to seek private investment from corporations, but this is going to be a massive undertaking. It's going to take a lot of money to fix it back to the standard of where we want it, but what we've got to do first is raise enough money to fix the roof and stop the rot. There's a big dream, and we've got Main Street involved, and there's a lot of people that love the history, and the commission wanted to save this thing, and it's heading down that path, so we're really excited about it.
It's going to be a lot of fun tomorrow. The last picture we're going to show you is the vision of the Dueling Barrels facility. If we'll go ahead and look at that now, going to be located on Hambly Boulevard, downtown. That is what you're going to be looking at in a very short amount of time.
Very short, and again, if you look to, this is a rendition of downtown. You look at where the trees are on the left, you'll see that's where the theater is. It abuts the theater. It's going to be a great visual from Hambly Boulevard. Again, it's a tourist attraction. That's why the glass windows, if you go downtown Lexington, you'll see a facility that looks a lot like this. Yeah. So it's a great investment for our community, but it was a first step into all the announcements and then one big piece of the puzzle that we just went over.
Yeah, and a great friendship and partnership developed with Pierce Lyons and his wife Deidre and the entire Alltech family.
Along with many new companies to come. We've been in contact with a lot of things that we know that's going to take place in the future, and I know the commission's excited about it. We're excited about it, and big long story, and I apologize. I know we went over a little bit today, Jill, but I think the public, in the name of transparency, those that don't get to attend the work session, needed to understand
Absolutely.
The full story and where this commission has come for the last 10 years.
And many exciting things to come.
Wonderful things.
You will be out next week on your trip you talked about, but like I said, we will be speaking with Neil Wilson next week. Jimmy Carter and I will be talking to him about the new stores coming into the Pikeville Commons and when we can expect some of those to be opened up. So we'll take care of it.
I'm excited. I can't wait to get back and watch.
It'll be a lot of fun. Donovan, thanks so much.
My pleasure.
This has been the Pikeville City Manager's Report. Thank you so much for joining us. Good day.